Already it's the summer, and here at the Parliament in Strasbourg it feels like the past 12 months have gone by in a flash. But this last plenary session before the summer recess gives us an opportunity to look back over the past 12 months. And it's been a year of great success for the EPP Group, starting of course with the European election, in which the group emerged once again as the largest and most influential political force in Europe. It was a remarkable election in every respect. Some 360 million voters were eligible to vote in 27 member states, another chapter in the story of this unique parliament. And the election took place at a time of deep economic crisis across Europe, an opportunity, you might think, for the left to strengthen its position. But instead, voters trusted the EPP to guide Europe back to prosperity. On the night that election results were declared, EPP TV broadcast live for 6 hours from the Parliament with continuous analysis, discussion and up-to-the-minute news from across Europe. The election result was not just good news for the EPP Group, but for the EPP political family. The Lisbon Treaty now states that when member states' governments are choosing the president of the European Commission, they should give due consideration to the results of the European elections. Our success in those elections gave the EPP Group the perfect opportunity to propose José Manuel Barroso for a second 5-year term as Commission President. And despite some last-minute efforts by the left to persuade the Parliament to reject his candidacy, Barroso won the approval of an absolute majority of MEPs for a second 5-year term.
We need a strong Europe, a strong European Commission. A strong Commission, let's be frank, has to be a political Commission. But the political Commission must not be a partisan Commission.
EPP sister parties are in government in 15 member states. So when national governments unveiled their nominations for Barroso's new commission, senior EPP politicians figured prominently. Examples included Michel Barnier, who was given the internal market portfolio, former MEP Viviane Reding, who took on justice and fundamental rights, and Antonio Tajani, another former MEP, who was put in charge of industry and entrepreneurship. At his confirmation hearing, he assured MEPs that he would focus first and foremost on remedies to the economic and financial crisis.
If you want a theme, I'll give you one. In the very short term, I'm committed to ensuring that small and medium-sized companies have access to credit. That's because if today we don't enable SMEs to survive, we risk turning the economic crisis, whose effects are already serious, into a profound social crisis.
Perhaps the most significant event for the EPP Group in the past 12 months has been the adoption of the Lisbon Treaty, which was itself the culmination of a decade of work focused on how to make the EU more democratic and more efficient. On the 1st of December last year, the treaty came into force, having overcome its final obstacle, a referendum in Ireland that approved the treaty by a 2-to-1 majority. For EPP Group Chairman Joseph Daul, the treaty's approval was a major victory for the EPP Group and the Parliament in general.
The Lisbon Treaty marks an important turning point in the evolution of the European institutions and the relations they will now have with each other. And it is clear that it is the Parliament that comes out stronger from the Lisbon Treaty, given it becomes a co-decision maker equal to the Council of Ministers on all topics that fall under EU jurisdiction.
The Lisbon Treaty changes the way the EU works and in particular extends the power of MEPs as co-legislators with the Council into 2 key areas, trade and agriculture. It also creates a new EU diplomatic service to give the Union more influence and importance in world affairs. And the treaty also creates the powerful new position of President of the European Council, whose main function is to chair EU summits of heads of government and represent the EU on the world stage. This post was filled by Belgium's Prime Minister Herman van Rompuy, who, after chairing his first meeting of the Council, indicated that addressing the financial and economic crisis would be his top priority.
The European Council wants to draw lessons from this crisis. That's why it created a task force under my authority. This task force will be established in close cooperation with the Commission and include representatives of the Member States, the rotating presidency and the European Central Bank. It will present its conclusions before the end of this year.
In the Parliament, a special committee was set up to look at the causes of the crisis and to suggest ways to prevent a similar event from happening again. EPP Group members have played a key role in the work of that committee, and EPP TV produced a special programme focusing on the committee's work. We visited a car factory in Belgium that was about to be closed with the loss of more than 1,000 jobs to illustrate the challenges facing the EU as it tries to find consensus on the ways to return Europe to prosperity. The EPP Group has also paid close attention to developments in the EU's so-called neighbourhood, particularly in Russia. The EPP wants a strong and constructive relationship with Moscow, but our MEPs haven't shied away from criticising Russia's leaders over human rights abuses and authoritarian tendencies. Late last year, we travelled to Moscow to speak to the leaders of Memorial, a coalition of human rights defenders who were awarded the Parliament's prestigious Sakharov Prize for the freedom of thought. Memorial's chairman, Oleg Orlov, told us the successes of the years immediately after the end of communism inspire him to keep going.
We achieved things in those long years, and not a little in terms of the democratization of the country, and for a time Russia, new Russia, moved sharply forward in the field of human rights. And well, that's our life. We can't give up the struggle halfway. Of course we'll continue the struggle.
Besides human rights, another key element to the EU's relationship with Russia is energy security. The EPP has played a leading role in the development of an EU common external energy security policy in order to diversify our sources of energy and to lessen our dependence on Russian imports. Such a policy will also be an important element in the Union's overall climate change action programme. The EPP Group has held several hearings related to energy security in the past year. Hungarian MEP András György told us that the EU needs to seize the opportunity to develop an energy policy that is less vulnerable to geopolitical considerations.
I think the most important answer to the current situation is the common European energy policy, a harmonized strategy by the member states. This strategy should stay on 4 pillars as far as I see: transparency, diversification, the competition, of course, and solidarity.
Also, throughout the past year, the EPP Group has continued to focus on consumer issues, the subjects that make a real difference in the everyday lives of European citizens. One such issue has been telecoms. For example, a new regulation steered through Parliament by EPP member Paul Rubig that limits roaming costs for mobile phone users while they're abroad has just come into force. The EPP wants to open up the market for telecom services, particularly broadband and internet TV services. When they were debating the so-called telecoms package, MEPs were lobbied heavily by consumer groups to offer internet users greater legal protection from being cut off by internet service providers. EPP Group Vice Chairman Gunnar Hökmark told EPP TV that the package of measures reflects the rapid changes taking place in the digital economy and will enhance consumers' rights.
First of all, that you can make a choice and choose another operator. It will be much easier, and that's why you can always be the one who decides what sort of package of services you shall have. Number of channels, or how to use internet, what sort of technologies, or to use e-health, e-medicine, e-trade, etc. All the things that we have seen coming forward the last 10 years, they will accelerate the next coming 10 years, and I want Europe to be in the lead in this arena.
The EPP Group is always looking to the future, but we also need an understanding of our past in order to guide ourselves to our common European future. In the past year, EPP TV has been focusing on some of the key milestones in the process of European integration. Last November, the EU marked the 20th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall, an event that hastened the end of communism across Europe and gave nations in the Soviet bloc the courage and inspiration to embrace a democratic future in the EU family. EPP TV travelled to Berlin to talk to Germans who knew what life was like under the communist regime and who played their own small part in the night the wall came down. And in May this year, we marked the 60th anniversary of the Schuman Declaration, the vision of forging a united Europe from the ruins of war that set us on the road to unity and integration. The declaration was the brainchild of French Foreign Minister Robert Schuman, a Christian Democrat who has inspired many generations of Europeans since, including our own EPP Group Chairman Joseph Daul, who said that the EU was still some way from achieving Schuman's vision.
Je crois que Robert Schuman ne serait pas content.
I believe that Robert Schuman would not have been happy. We have become too nationalistic, and I think he would be cross with us. We could have gone much further in Europe if we had followed his thoughts, and if we had not only followed our national, not to say nationalistic conscience. So I think it is our duty to go much further still, and much faster for the well-being of our citizens.
Pour le bien-être de nos concitoyens.
So, all in all, a very successful year for the EPP Group and for EPP TV as well. We'll be taking a break over the summer because the Parliament is in recess, but we'll be back at the end of August when the EU will be back at work, and you can be sure that the EPP, as Europe's driving force, will be setting the agenda. Thanks for watching, and see you again soon.